Welcome to Ticker Talk with hosts Max and Kate, podcasting from Treetown in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ticker Talk shares the everyday success stories and science behind the heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness training practiced at CrossFit Treetown. Max and Kate explore the research, science, and practical experiences behind Ticker Training, a program developed by Max for just about everyone, your grandma, your cousin who runs marathons, and you. In this series, we'll explore what exactly heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness is, how what you eat affects how you move and how you feel, what tools to use in tracking progress, and how to fit training into your everyday life. Join us and learn something new to make a healthier you. Pace yourself. Welcome to the Ticker Studio, Max and Kate in today.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello. Today, I want to take a minute to share a screen and kind of give a good example of what happens when we start, anyone starts Ticker Training, kind of how it looks like to get a baseline test and how changes happen relatively rapidly for some people.
Okay.
It was kind of vague. But
yeah. Well, so we're going to talk here just to try to give people hope.
Depending on where they're at. So we recently have gone into a whole bunch of different gyms, and we've done a bunch of baseline testing.
Right.
And not everyone's baseline test shows that they are metabolically efficient and flexible yet. There's a fair amount of athletes from various, points in training that get profiles that maybe show that they need to work on their metabolic efficiency.
Right. They had to slow way down significant amounts to where it almost feels like they're not doing anything, correct?
Right, because Ticker Training in general is pace yourself, and you think, cool, I know how to pace, I know how to slow down, but sometimes when we tell you to pace yourself, it's slowing down a lot more than maybe you expected.
Sure.
And having the data right in front of you showing how far you're going to have to change your movement patterns can be frustrating to some.
Got it. So we're going to just highlight this test to give people hope and to show, like, by doing it, it will get better. Correct?
We have two tests done approximately 10 days apart.
Yeah, I think it was 12 or so, but
somewhere in there.
All right, so you can see up here on the first part here, the first test, we prescribed a MAF of 107. We said to train between 130 and 155. Avoid going over 171. Which,
in raw numbers, short of that really low MAF at 107, that's a pretty decent training zone.
Right.
And not going over 171 seems like it would be a doable pace.
Right. And then on the second test here, we show a train between 124 and 140. Avoid going over 150 and MAF of 124.
Which, interestingly, is quite strikingly different, but not necessarily overly high or overly low.
Yeah. So remember here, let's just do a quick rundown. When we look at these tests, this here is heart rate. You can see.
Before you get into that, the test was.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So the test is a ramp-up test on a fan bike. You start at a really low pace.
35 RPMs.
And we ramp you up 1 minute at a time, 3 RPMs per minute until muscle failure ends the test. And then we capture a little bit of recovery at the end.
Got it. Okay. And just keep in mind, let's start over here. This first test, or this first graph here, blue is O2 in, red is CO2 exhaled out. You can see on the test on the right here, there's a significant gap. He's pulling much more oxygen in than CO2 he's exhaling. And even all the way up into the further along in this test, you can see he has to do a fair bit of work before he even gets to where he came in and started at on his first test.
So what we're looking at, let's break it down and analyze this first test all together in one first. So we're looking at the first 600 seconds of this test.
Yep.
Blue is oxygen in, red is carbon dioxide out. Blue does win out in that top graph. We see higher peaks of blue over the red. So that means he's bringing in more oxygen than carbon dioxide, but not by a lot, as those two colors are really close together.
That essentially starts ending at around second 450.
Okay. And then going down, we are looking at the heart rate chart in the green box, and you see a dramatic rise in heart rate right there starting around second 200.
Right. It gets
seeing it was a fixed test, that just is how his body reacted to, like, ooh, we're working out, let's go.
Right. And you can kind of see how that reflects here with his fuel utilization. At that same point there is when he really starts pulling a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugar as opposed to utilizing fat. So that's one of the reasons that this extreme change occurred, right? So you can just see his, when we were determining MAF, we're trying to find a spot here, where he's utilizing more fat than carbohydrates, and it's
more air than breathing out
right?
carbon dioxide.
And it's somewhere like at second, 145 or so.
So right from the beginning, he was efficient. And then as soon as his body registered exercise, for lack of a better way to put that, his heart rate jumped up.
Right. At the 200 second mark, it was time. It was time to rock and roll.
Analyzing this test, I remember asking this individual, I don't know all of these people. And he has a stressful job. Yep. And I said, you seem like someone that's like ready to go, an intense personality. And probably he agreed. Like, yeah, that is kind of how I roll.
Right. So he came in here. You can see this is, you look at enough of these, you can see this is somebody that's under a lot of stress. Sure. You can just see it, right? So now we're going to kind of go and jump over. You can see the difference in heart rate.
Hold on. Before we analyze, he left and did some training.
Sure.
And?
Yeah, what was the bulk of his training like?
So he did, standard ticker training. This was in the beginning of January that he was training. So it was right when we all started to establish a lot more baselines and do a lot of longer steady state work to try to establish, good pacing work on the bike and the rower.
And he wasn't frustrated at all.
He loved it. No, he was very frustrated. He felt like there was a workout we had to do with snatches, and, he had to drop his weight down significantly from what he had previously been able to use in a workout, which most people find, especially with barbell, when they first start this training and you're first looking at the stress, you don't realize how stressful barbells are.
Right.
So he was frustrated enough that he thought this test
must have been bad.
Right. I want to retest.
Well, this is relatively typical of, high intensity work. You walk into the gym and you do any amount of work at all and your heart rate skyrockets.
Gyms are exciting.
Right? Yeah. I mean, if you're trained to do most of your work at 160 to 190 beats, that's where you'll get to really quick.
For sure. Which he was really good at. And I think he is somebody that really loves training. I think he loves coming into the gym. And he did continue to go to the gym in between these two tests. He also added in some steady state volume work on his own and did some of our endurance scope programming.
At his MAF.
Just to hopefully make this better so that he can move that much more efficiently.
Well, it worked, right? So if we kind of look at this first graph in relationship to one another, tight gap here between the blue and the red, O2 and CO2, compared to here. And you can see he maintains this into higher intensities.
I'm looking at that graph and thinking, when the blue is on top like that and you have that gap, that's just breathing easy, which you want to do all the time. There's nothing worse than like going down to your basement, grabbing laundry, and walking up the stairs and being winded. Or walking from a parking lot into a store and being winded. You want to be able to move a lot of oxygen.
Yeah. And then you can see here the heart rate difference. Right?
Nice, even rise.
This is just a more calm individual, right? Just feels better when he comes into the gym and leaving. Right. You can see, his MAF here is way over here, closer to 125, 126 beats compared to 107.
And he hit MAF much farther time-wise into the test, meaning he's increasing his capacity of being efficient from like the very beginning, here you go, to, hey, do a little bit of work.
Right.
And I'm still efficient partway down.
You can see he's, pulling more fat. He's utilizing more oxygen all the way into second 300 before, further than that, 330, 350 almost before he gets to his MAF. Okay, so this is something that I want to highlight here. We're going to pull this. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to look over the entirety from 1 to 600 seconds, and we're going to compare what was going on stress-wise for him. Okay, so this RER number here is a measure of stress and strain. This is ratio of CO2 and O2, and this is the average for this 600 seconds. You can see this one's significantly lower. Okay, you can see the amount of fat he utilized, 71% compared to 40%.
Those are just, breathing easy oxygen. When your body is pulling more oxygen, it's efficient, and it's using a sustainable energy source, which is fat.
Now I want to take this is pretty profound here. This heart rate peak at second 600 was 202 beats per minute. On this one, it was 161 beats. Okay. Significant changes. You can see here on this one, he pulled in more oxygen at his peak. So there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Let's talk about that heart rate. I mean, heart rate is relative to the individual. And we have a lot of athletes that have high heart rates, low heart rates, depends on where you're at. But I think any human at 202 beats a minute, that's a high heart rate. So it doesn't matter if that's relative or not. When you're working at 202 beats a minute, then you're working hard. Like, I can imagine what that would feel like for me.
Sure.
And now we're looking at that same second at being at 161 beats a minute.
Right.
The difference between that is
significant.
Right. He's working. His body is responding in a lot more calm way, able to handle a lot more work at that same second.
Right. So now I also pulled in here second 400 to 500, which is where, this is just past your MAF or his MAF of what, it's just kind of in that where a lot of people spend a lot of time training. This is where you can get a lot of work done without, going into full sugar burn.
I call this the typical CrossFitters 3-2-1 go pace.
Yeah. So this is slower than that a little bit, but you can see heart rate peak is 146 compared to 193.
Yeah.
RER mean was 0.89 before, 0.82 after. Again, keep in mind this is a direct measurement of stress and strain. This is a measurement of stress, right? This person on the right here is under much less stress and duress than this person performing the exact same amount of work.
It's the same amount of work. You'd expect, if I didn't know any better, I would think that one workout was, something short and sweet like Fran, and one was much longer, like a,
right.
20-minute Metcon.
Right. So you can see here the duration is the same, and it's the same seconds, right? So just to give everybody, this is the same part of the same test. It's just on a different day after some steady state slowing down training. So keep in mind, again, all we're noting this because this is 12 days of just slowing down, right?
And this is not an anomaly. I can think of several athletes that we have tested that have results like this. And these are not necessarily people that we would consider being... I mean, if I think of someone that I look at this metabolic profile and I'm like, wow, that person is very, out of shape and unhealthy and unfit. Metabolically, yes. But these may be your, quote unquote, best athletes in the gym that you are chasing that have profiles like this.
Yes.
They've trained their bodies to work a certain way. Their bodies get really good at it. But that also can be why they can make changes and adaptations that fast. Yeah. Now, what is next for this athlete? This is what happened in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We gave him new zones and sent him off. Right.
So he's moved from, metabolically essentially broken to kind of metabolically almost efficient. Not quite. He's still a little inefficient.
In repair.
Yeah. But let's look at just kind of so if we're looking at this graph, this is the relationship between fat and carbohydrates in comparison on these two tests. You can see how little fat he pulled on the first one in compared to the second one. He almost doubled it. Now, this is still not where he will be next time we test him. This is going to be closer, I would think, to 10 to 15 calories per minute. Now we're starting to get into the next phase of, metabolic efficiency.
Being able to use that oxygen that he's learning to pull in at a calm rate.
And even at higher intensities, which he's already starting to do. You can see it, right? So let's wrap this thing up, Kate, and just kind of, the whole point here was for some of you that are frustrated with your training zones, and you can do two things: come get tested, and you've made adaptation.
It's a good look under the hood,
right?
Stuff you can't see, but definitely happens.
But understand that this slow work is having an incredible metabolic response. Which person is going to reach a body composition that they're after sooner, quicker? This one or this one? Right. So just kind of keep all that in mind and
keep with the work.
Right. Stay focused. Be patient. right? We want to have you for years of doing this, not just 3-6 weeks, 4-6 weeks.
Yep. Trust the process.
Cool. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah.